is very transparent.
And I think, you know, how well our clients are, how pleased they are with the service, and I think by clients, teachers in the district and administrators, that determines how successful this is working.
When I interviewed the principals, I literally had two of them say, "Who are you?" I've never seen an IT person. There were the major complaints, especially from the elementaries, is that nobody had ever visited them. My staff, I make sure, even if there's not a problem in a building, swing by, stop over, see the principals, make yourself visible, see if there's an issue you can help with. Because as my goal is, as the tickets decrease and we get ahead of this rollout of technology issue, that we take the technicians and get them back into the classroom, because what needed to get fixed here was pretty obvious. It was very basic. The next level of technology, how to really get Torrington on a futuristic platform, is going to come out of the classroom. It's not going to come from IT. And to get that, I need the techs back in the classroom. I need them having the dialogue with the teachers, picking the brains of the best and brightest and saying, how can we leverage them going forward? Right now, we're trying to keep the phones up, we're trying to keep the servers going, we're making tremendous progress. The very next step to pivot is, how do we improve the classroom and take it to the next level? What's the plan year 2, 3, and 4 that we would recommend?
Thank you.
No problem.
And the other piece too is we will have a complete inventory of every piece of IT equipment in the district. You know, they're working on it now.
Yeah, with a code, with a property code.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Dan. Mr. Campolita, still with us?
I've been here.
It's been quiet, I didn't know I nudge the table here and get you staffing up, data.
Before you start though, just so there isn't a question, because I know I have board members, Mrs. Kemper with very sharp eyes, and last week we had Dan, she was at a conference and needed, you know, she had it all. She sent it to us, and as we put these together, there are 2 places where we counted, and it's only at Forbes School, where we counted 2 teachers twice. Georgianne Sabio and was it Simone Monique? Okay, but not in our dollars amount. So we're not double dipping, trying to take, you know, if they're paid in a grant, but they were also in the general budget. They're paid with a grant. Okay? And I knew you'd catch that, so I thought I'd catch that for you. So thank you.
So then we can just move on.
Yeah. That's not like that. So, go ahead.
We had been asked to generate a report of staff, where they're located, and what their salaries are. Danielle and our offices work together quite a bit. Has information through, I think it would be current through the beginning of the school year, which you see in front of you. And this report has the names of each staff member at each school. If you look in column 3, that's the site. EA, of course, is easy. You would know all the abbreviations. What their FTE or their full-time employee status is at that school. Some employees are district-wide. For example, if you look on the East list, which is your first page, you'll see the art teacher is .8 in the East, and then if you look at Torrington, he's .2 over there. So we've also split the reports that way. Other than the one little, glitch with a couple of teachers, this should be very accurate, at least at the beginning of school. I would also add that my office generates a report every year called the ED 163, which also tracks all the personnel, and that rolls out all the way through December. So the first report that goes to the state is for all new teachers added and all new administrators. Ruth Johnson, who is my very able secretary, next report, which is a snapshot of the district through October 1st. And this would also break out without, it doesn't have the salaries, but if you're interested in seeing that report as well, we can certainly bring that to the next meeting. So we'll give you two different looks at the way the district, where the staffing is rolled out throughout the district. So I'm sure you've looked at it. If you have any questions, I'm sure either Danielle or I could answer them.
Just give me 1 second. The reason I had asked them to put this together was that, again, when we sat in front of the Board of Finance, when we do a projected budget for the upcoming year, we project the number of staff per building, but then when school starts, based on population and need, sometimes that staffing doesn't match what was in the proposed budget. And when they go to look at our budget, they're looking at what was proposed last year, not where we actually started last year. So I asked them to put this together again so we can sit with the Board of Finance and say, here's where we started the year. So when you look at next year's budget, instead of looking at what was proposed, here's the actuality of where we started. It was just kind of to give them a reference point. Andrew?
Two questions. First question is, why is on the principal line item, I see, for example, Joanne Creedon, she has the 13-14 FTE salary, 122,107, and then below 122,107. But then I look at Sue Ferguson, and there's only one item.
It's just how my spreadsheet is. It's just how, if you see it bold, that's what, any bold number is what I pick up when I auto sum it at the end. So, that's the answer.
Well, if you look at, E-School's the only one that doesn't have a total for the principal. The other, every other category has a bold total for that category. E-School just doesn't have a total line. If you go to the Ford School, that's just, what's that?
It only has a total line because it's bonus.
I'm sorry, Owen has a total line, doesn't have the non-total line.
And there is no discrepancy with any of these principal salaries that what I see here, there's no extra, there's no other compensation which may boost that number. So,
This is the contracted amount for the TPSAA contract. That's what the salary is for principal.
and none of these people
Just the
qualify.
doctorate isn't
Just,
into
yeah,
this,
the only
because
thing,
that's a
right,
stipend.
right, the only thing would be is a stipend for a doctor.
And none of these people qualified, I believe, under the administrator's contract on involuntary placement to a different school that their previous salary was the same. I'm just,
No, they're being paid at the correct level.
No, I'm trying to understand what you're asking.
Exactly.
well, I just want to, okay.
No, they're paid, the salary you see here is the contracted salary for that position. So that is correct.
And then I might as well ask this question, which was, we projected that we were gonna have a Latin teacher at the high school, and where would that be in your,
Well, she would have been hired as a long-term sub,
Isn't that?
Suzanne Sheehan.
Yeah.
that was just, that's a recent
That's a
hire?
very
Yes, it's a
recent,
very
so
recent
that
hire.
might not have.
Would have been in the past.
But that person,
Long-term sub right now.
Okay, Suzanne Sheehan, you said?
Yes.
Yep, she's in the .4 world language.
Okay.
And then,
She is.
yeah, and then the Mary Grace Hanoush.
Yep.
You'll see the FTE is a 1.10 because we are paying an extra class.
Right, she's gone to sixth class and part of the Italian.
Right.
So we really had two world languages that were covered. One was the Italian class, and then of course the Latin class. So Mary Grace Hanoush volunteered to take the sixth class.
right,
And then we hired Suzanne Sheehan,
as a long-term
as a long-term substitute. Yes.
I think what some people have questioned is when you put together your numbers for the budget for this year, you budgeted how much for that teaching position originally? Because now you're looking, a long-term sub gets the starting salary of a teacher. And did we budget that amount, or did we budget for?
I'm going off the top of my head because I don't have that, but if I was to budget right now for a world language teacher, I'd absolutely put it at top step because they're hard to find. So I definitely budgeted higher 70s, lower 80s for
So
that.
we're probably looking at a difference.
So yeah, there's a
surplus of
savings.
probably about
Isn't that the number to the right of what he's looking at?
That's the total for that step, and because she's 0.4, then it drops to 31,000.
So you have 78,302 for that position,
Right,
but we're only paying that person 31,320 and 80 cents.
Right.
Right.
So we're saving.
So some people would say that that budget has been inflated for that amount. Is there any situations where the reverse took place this year?
yeah,
Which is
absolutely, and I'll be
the-
bringing that report to the budget committee next month. We already talked about that with all the salaries, to see where we are, where we
Yeah.
landed, all, because everything changes, especially with the MOU we signed with the teachers after the budget took place. I budgeted 65,000 for all new hires, and then we have an MOU for teachers that we couldn't hire above the 5th step. That's a max of 54,000. So right there, we have a variance. So next budget committee, I'll bring
Yeah, could you net
where
that
all the
out?
hiring is. I'm sorry?
Could you net that out?
Yeah, that's one of our agenda items for November.
Because, clearly in the community, people are going, well, we budgeted this
Yeah.
month for teachers and we're
Right.
not spending it, but that's only looking at that side, since people don't look at the other side. of it.
Right.
But to answer your question, it wasn't an inflated item. We did budget to hire a full-time person, we just couldn't find them.
Okay.
So it wasn't an intentional
Okay,
inflation
I
of the
didn't
budget.
use the word intention.
No, you used an inflation, and it
Well,
wasn't. It was budgeted to have a full-time employee, we just couldn't find them.
And we were able to,
Mr. Rivera?
What's the, this one's quick and then I have a follow-up. What's the difference between M and MA?
Masters and masters plus 30?
Masters plus 15.
Masters plus 15.
We have
Okay,
different,
and S is 6 years?
the different
Yeah.
levels.
and this is,
And I was disappointed to see that the internship coordinator position looks like it was never filled.
It hasn't been.
well, we hired the director of school counseling first, and now she's working with the director of secondary ed, and exactly how that role will be used, but we are looking for someone now.
So,
Will we have
students this year
someone?
benefit from internships? I guess that's what I'm
That's,
asking.
yes, yeah.
It's just second half of the year.
She's on it. We've been emailing back and forth. Our new director of guidance.
Yeah, she
is-
couldn't come on until
She's
the end of-
looking, yeah, she just got hired, but that's one of her number one things to do.
It's just
The priority,
concerning.
yeah.
I mean, we cut it down to what, a 0.2, so.
Yeah.
I don't know how much work it's gonna be.
One of the
for that
things-
anyway, but-
I don't know if he's still here, but one of the things that Richard is looking to do is how we can get students, he's working with Andrew Marchian, and how we can get students at the initial IT certification, and, teach the course and come out with that certificate. So Richard's looking into what that requires, and if kids can take it, like a 2-semester class.
And how is it that some faculty salaries are above top step? I mean, does it include stipends?
Stipends.
That's what it is?
Are stipends included, or?
Which one are you
No, it would
looking
be
at?
if they have a 6th year, or not 6th year, if they have a doctorate.
I don't.
Which one are you
Which
looking
one?
at?
You're
So,
looking-
for example, if I looked at the, I don't want to do it in front of me. So if I looked at the high school world language, the third individual down, salary exceeds top step?
That's the one point, we were just talking about that because we needed to hire another teacher for Latin? Italian, excuse me, and we couldn't find a teacher, so that teacher said that she would work an additional class, so now we're paying her above full-time, if you will.
It's
If you look at the
More we're
FTE,
paying less.
if you look at the FTE, Chris, she's a 1.1, not a 1.
Thank you.
So like next year, if we have fewer students who want Italian, she'll go back to what her,
I mean, it's great that that's happening, it's just, it's strong.
On that situation, did you have to get the union to check off on that?
It's already in the
It's in
union
the
contract.
contract.
That teachers
We've done that
can-
before.
Yep.
Any other questions from the staffing report? Yes.
Just, I think this is great. It's been, where's Waldo? I'm trying to figure out who's actually in every building, so it's nice to see it.
it's also great though too, because we now have, like going into budget, we have human resources and, you know,
You know, Danielle and I have a very good working relationship, and what we found is there's a lot of places where both of our offices have contact points, and it's worked out very well, so that we would work together and generate something like this.
You wanna come to our budget meetings?
Absolutely not, I don't, you have to clear that with my wife, I'll give you
he will soon.
I'm sure I'll be there soon, absolutely.
Another month or two.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
4J, ACLU THS handbook. This one kind of didn't have it. Are you doing that one?
Yes, in your packet, included, because the question which came from ACLU was the sign-off page for student athletes. So in your packet tonight is the draft of what was recommended. So because the whole packet's going back to policy SIC subcommittees, but that was the draft for what should be included. There's also 2 sample policies, one for chemical health for student athletes and for bullying. And, yep, these 2, what Shipman recommended is that rather than put them in the athletic policy, that we update our board policy, and then in the athletic handbook, just put C, board policy, and cite the number. And we have to do bullying policy because this is up to code for what changes were made to bullying policies or mandates in 2012.
Which also impacts the safe school climate policy. As well. That's it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Is this going to policy or coming? This is, that's
No, this we just got back, because the ACLU had filed a challenge to our book, and Shipman just got this to us at the end of last week. We were able to get it into this packet so that we received back from them what the complaints or recommended revisions from ACLU are to keep us from getting yelled at. And then the changes tied to these 3 policies that they're recommending them to take a look at. Now, this board had originally settled on sending this through school improvement because at the time policy was flooded, and if we do go, thank you to Andrew for me getting my book out, because now I have it. No, wrong book, sorry, gotta do it the other one. Sorry, I can't take the credit there. our standing committees. School improvement. We'll work on. This being they're supposed to work on the Torrington High School programs and, I thought I said it in there. Well, they'll promote the community relationship between the schools and the board, so this could go through the school improvement committee for them to get the book put together and then sent to policy, for policies approval, and then come here. If the board wants to go that way, or it can go direct to policy and policy can deal with it. It's not directly identified of where handbooks go to get evaluated. You ready for it? So, if that's what the board wants to do. Yeah. He's nodding. No.
I have a question.
Yes.
Page 5, 6A. Consequences for use, sale, distribution, possession, controlled substances, drugs, performance enhancing, blah, blah, blah. Any student athlete in Torrington Public Schools using, consuming, possessing, et cetera, drug paraphernalia, performance enhancing, distributing, selling, aiding, or at a school-sponsored activity is subject to discipline up to and including expulsion pursuant to the board's student discipline policy.
He's on page 5,
6A.
6A, of the first, get to the name of it. The chemical health policy for student athletes.
Thank you.
So they've included on or off school property or at school-sponsored activity. It's pretty broad net than I think what we were considering, right? So if this could be applied to the student handbook for automatic expulsion, suspension from extracurricular activities, the thing we were talking about the last meeting,
Yeah.
that language should be acceptable, right? If we put that in the student handbook, not the athletic handbook? In other words, arrest for felony crime is automatic suspension from school-sponsored activity until such time as, they can prove their innocence. Does that seem to be in alignment with what that language is? Doesn't seem to be in conflict with it, right?
I would agree it's not a conflict with it.
But this is, they're caught with drugs in this instance.
Right, I mean, it's,
This is
no, I know it's
chemicals.
specific to drugs, but clearly they mention selling, which is clearly a crime.
But they're caught, I guess I'm looking at this, they've done it, they've been caught with, you don't know?
No, I'm sorry, I was answering her question. She was asking me a question at the same time. So-
I'm not sure if the attorney's legal opinion would be the same. This, they're caught with drugs, they're selling drugs.
Well,
If
yeah,
someone's
which is a
accused of
crime.
something,
Yeah.
Well, that would be,
I don't
with the topic and the focus of that, I would think that would be something for us to get an actual opinion on,
Yeah,
of where to put it and how we can word it.
in the student handbook.
In the student handbook, and would it cover both? And I think we should be able to send, if you could jot that and email it to me, I'll forward it right up to Rich and have him get us a legal opinion on it, so that before policy meets, they'll know how we can fit this in there and what
In the
the
student, no, again, in the student handbook.
student
not the
handbook,
athletic.
and have it, yeah,
Yeah, and have it be generic.
Or if it needs to be
generic to
separate
all.
policy.
Yep,
Or if it needs to be a separate policy and then cited
yeah,
within.
yeah, or if it needs to be a
the
separate
handbook.
policy identified in the handbook, of if you do this, see policy number, blah, 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 and this is the.
Right.
And we would have to make sure discipline policy is up with this, because this is
I'll just send it. Yeah.
based on Shipman and Goodwin's discipline policy. And I believe we went with that.
Mr. Chair, before we go to the expense again of doing this, do you want to straw poll the board? I mean, are they behind this idea? Just
What are you asking specifically?
language in our student handbook that says, if a student is arrested on a felony charge for any crime, they are automatically suspended from extracurricular, any extracurricular activity that they're involved in. So if it's sports, band, theater, whatever. That's it, you know, until such time as they can prove their innocence or whatever the language would be.
I think we just took a straw poll that would come out of policy, right?
Yeah, but do we want, but Ken is suggesting that we run it through the legal to wordsmith it.
The original
Yeah.
suggestion, the original
I
suggestion.
don't want to waste the
Vince-
money if most of the board members think that they don't want to.
Right, the original suggestion here was these ACLU changes go to policy.
Yeah.
What Paul is asking, which was a conversation we've had for a couple of meetings now, is to broaden the scope of just looking at an athlete and looking at all extracurricular activities and extra, co-curricular,
Co-curricular.
extra and co-curricular, too big of words this time. And see if, you know, just in the handbook, that would cover both. And have something in there that if a student is arrested of a felony crime, then they would be automatically suspended from extracurricular and co-curricular activities until they can prove otherwise.
So you're asking if we add, if we're gonna send that to our attorney to see if there's a legal
To see
basis
if
to do that, or we're asking if we feel that that's.
Well, what I'm saying is before, what Ken was suggesting is that he send it to the attorney to get a formal language that would be acceptable in the policy. And what I'm saying is before we spend the money again on the attorney for do this, draw a poll to see if the board thinks that we should be spending time and money to get that opinion. That's what I'm saying. People feel no, they don't want that in the student handbook, let's say it now before we spend the money on the attorney.
Start with this thing.
Yeah.
Dan?
Hey, as long as the attorney says language is good, I'm all for it.
Yes.
I would like to, in the opinion, I would also like to know what their feeling is if the student is later found innocent, does the board have exposure?
Oh, I'm sure that would be part of it.
I don't like the idea of before someone's found guilty.
Yeah, I side with that, but I thought you were asking for something separate. I thought you were asking if we feel that we should have the attorney give us an opinion as opposed to what our opinion is. Those are two
Right.
separate things.
Well, the question is, should we waste the money going to the attorney if the board doesn't support the notion?
Right. Not enough people support
All right,
the notion.
well, I don't support it, yeah, right.
All right, I did.
Yes.
We go to the attorney, we get an opinion on the language. They could come back and tell us you can't put it in there.
Correct.
I mean, just to get that opinion before we, okay.
And the language.
It's not that we can't, it's been advised against it.
Yeah, that's true. Yes.
Just saying.
All right. So,
And just for those of you who've been involved in expulsions and suspensions, and it is a fine line. We may find out from, our police department that, the child was involved, blah, 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 blah. But by the time they do their investigation and it goes up and then they can do the arrest and all this, in the meantime, we have to decide this. If we have to do our own investigation as a public school, then we have to decide, are we going to suspend this child and, or what action they did? Will it go to expulsion or will just be 10? So we get 10 days to do our investigation because, is it a danger to others? It's, so you really have to keep the law and what we're doing as a public school separate. And once you put the child out for even for suspension for 10 days, you do have to provide alternative education.
that's not what we're talking about.
No, but I'm just saying, that'll come up with your question.
We're just talking about extra.
But timing,
Doesn't
they're
matter.
not,
We have
when
kids
they're,
in school.
they're not notified, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, question. I'm looking at your sample Form A, report of suspected bullying behaviors, and it says school employees should file with the school principal. Then you look at
This is all gonna be discussed in policy. This is all just
I
being.
thought
There is a point of order.
We're
This
just-
has already been referred to committee.
Yeah, we're just pushing this to policy for them to vet through all these recommendations.
So you're welcome
This is, so we're not discussing this.
We just did. We discussed what came up, and then we discussed, the decision was to push it to policy, to have them vet, you said, yeah, policy.
Yeah,
So
on
it's
that
gonna
one
go-
issue, this is a different issue.
No, this is all one
That's
packet.
all one.
It's one packet coming back from Shipman and Goodwin and the ACLU as to what we have to do with this handbook.
And what are these pages, one, on report of suspected bullying behavior?
As part of the recommended policies to go with the handbook that have to go to policy
Right.
for vetting.
And we just talked about one aspect of that pertaining to whether or not we're going to suspend a student from extracurricular
Yep.
activities.
Yes.
Now, I'm talking about another part of the same document that we just had a discussion.
to. Was it caused a separate issue?
Pardon?
Paul was actually not talking about this document at all. He was talking
Right.
about a separate issue.
So
So
we
he wasn't even
settled
talking
some-
about anything.
No.
So what,
Not that document.
So this wasn't a discussion item, this package?
it was.
Okay, so I-
We discussed it, it went to committee, now we're going beyond, we're going to the next item.
But it's a discussion item for us tonight, right?
Yes, it is. We were just going through the discussion, but we moved it to policy, and now we were going on to policy 6088. But what is it?
Okay,
Quick
well,
question?
I mean,
Go ahead.
it's just
Go ahead.
that on page one here of the sample form, it says
Yeah.
school employees should file with the school principal.
Yes.
And then you look at page 8, documentation and maintenance of log. Each school shall maintain written reports. B, the principal of each school shall maintain
As a
a
point
list
of
of
order,
numbers.
this comes back out of policy. It will require a first read and can be debated at that meeting.
Right, and then it'll get a second read. So I'm just curious
Okay,
what
so
you.
really, this item should have not been a discussion item, it should have been just an.
Well, it's an
Information
information,
sharing.
well, it's in one column, information sharing and discussion. But do you want to debate, no, do you want to debate the
No, I'm not,
policy?
no, I'm not, I just want to bring to the attention that, one, it kind of contradicts each other, which is, you're saying that documents should be written, shall be written and reported, and then you have a sample here which says, if the employees should, but aren't required to, fill out this report.
And on,
Okay,
yep,
look,
at the November 6th policy committee meeting, this is going to be vetted thoroughly.
okay, I'm
Okay.
okay.
All of those questions will be answered. Okay? You're welcome to attend. But you can't.
I can, but I won't.
We have to 11 before we have to. 4K, policy 6088, Ellen.
Can't believe it.
Mr. Can't believe it. She passed the buck.
I guess so.
You did.
This was, I think we did 4 reads on this in policy. 5. And, you know, through the various discussions, this is the policy we put forward for your first read. We cleaned up some of the language, fixed some of the clunky grammar in it that we went through and fixed. We're trying to streamline the process, but still make sure that, you know, the ground is covered that needs to be covered. So,
Any major changes? No, just really a
It was
grammar.
mostly housekeeping.
you know, there were some efficiencies that we put in. We scaled some extra steps back and combined some steps. So it's, the goal was to make it a much more efficient process so that once a field trip is approved, it'll, you know, be able to move forward, the bases will all be covered.
Well, that's in the next one. This is just the discussion phase.
Tried to speed it up.
Any discussion on it? Okay, action items. Financial statements.
I'd like to move to accept the financial report for the month. Second.
Yes. Who do you want to give it to?
That's-
Ellen, okay. Any discussion on the financial statement? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Mr. Kisco, are you in there? Okay, sure. Unanimous. Okay, approved budget transfers, Danielle or Chris?
I'll give it a whirl, Danielle.
Okay.
Well, do you want to make a motion to accept them?
Can I accept them en masse, or do we have to do them individually?
You can accept it in mass.
I would make that motion.
Second.
Second by Dan. Oh, he snuck in on there. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? You're opposed, Mr. Nugent? Mr. Nugent is opposed. Okay. Consent agenda minus 4A.
I'd like to move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
All right.
Second.
Second by. Second? Chris. Okay. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Mr. Nargi is opposed. Approval of policy 6088 field trips. Motion by Ellen, second by Vincent. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Comments for the good of the order. Start with Mr. Kiska?
None tonight.
None. Carl?
I would like to see the board do its self-evaluation so that we can do the evaluation of the superintendent. That would be lovely. Also, just things to consider, maybe we should be getting some metrics together that we can be evaluating on some type of regular basis for the performance of the school district, kind of in a report card. That's a very school thing to do, as opposed to kind of disparate parts. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Mr. Romero?
Yes. Had a few complaints from taxpayers about an inability to access, or rather the lack of information being posted on the district website for school events. So I guess this would also be items for the upcoming agenda, but I would like to see that problem solved, and I would like administration to prepare for the board a report of who the building person is, who's the designee in each building in charge of doing that, and what steps are they taking to make sure that events are getting posted. Some schools seem to be really on top of that, and other schools, I don't know, maybe they don't have as many activities, or the information just isn't getting out, but I think with our added secretarial support that we've done, we should be able to do that.
Okay.
My comment is actually probably for the bad of the order, but I'm going to say it anyways because it's been going on for too long. I do believe we need to have a retreat. But the last few months, I think people are vying, individual board members are vying for positions on the board in a leadership role. In fact, some have told the press that that's what they're doing. And I would like to encourage any other board members, if you want a position as chair or vice chair, that the mode to do that would be to put the work in, do the work, taking backhanded shots at the current chair, I don't think is the way to earn a chairmanship. And I think, quite frankly, it makes the entire board look foolish. So I hope that you will consider that whoever the chair is, whether it be Mr. Traub or when it was Mr. Gavin, whoever it is, I just don't think the way to move yourself ahead is to take cheap shots at the sitting chair. So I hope personally that that stops, because I think it's gotten far out of hand, and it's really making the entire board look bad. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Kevin?
No cheap shots here.
No, no, in the order.
No.
Comments for the bad in the order?
None. No comments.
Mr. Debo?
No.
Yes, something that I talked about in the past, I'd like to say probably one of the biggest problems this school district has is the funding that we receive from the state over the last 6 years. It's documented that they feel that they have maintained our funding on an equal or par level over the last several years. And I don't agree that this district is properly being funded by the state. I believe that the administration, Danielle, I think may say that there's nothing the district can do to articulate our plight. And maybe that's correct, maybe it's not correct, maybe that's not even what you're saying. But my feeling is that either a board member or a paid employee or both needs to somehow become a pain in somebody, whatever, in Hartford and start advocating that this funding for next year needs to drastically increase, because I see the board, as they vote tonight to want to have more administrators, listen to all of the other craziness that I think the state is mandating over the last several years on this board without funding. I think it's time that we send somebody over there and do whatever way of getting the light out to them, the public, the press, and have them explain and justify why a school district that has the type of makeup and problems that it has is not being funded to alleviate these problems. And if we don't do that, I just can never support increasing our budget until we have made whatever type of politically correct or non-politically correct demands on whoever over in Harvard, but there's got to be someone who's going to be held accountable over there. I don't know who that person is, but if you want me to call people, I'll just have to be that pain in the butt. Okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to thank Fiona for complimenting me. Thank you for help. Committee reports, personnel.
It's been a fairly steady month. As you saw, we brought the 2 proposals for the administrators forward to the budget. We are also asking for each department to create a policy and procedure manual. So if the head of that department at some point decides that they're going to retire, that we have something nice for somebody to walk into where they have a go-to book.
Okay. Policy.
We have nothing.
You have nothing, okay.
We've been working a lot and then more from tonight's meeting, so we're quite good.
Grievance is actually slowing down.
Well.
Was.
You spoke too soon.
School improvement.
Nothing happening there. At the last meeting, we agreed to look ahead to what was probably mislabeled as a whistleblower policy. And the agreement was that we would meet with the union reps to find out why that process, how that process is supposed to work, and why it may not be working in some instances. When information is coming forward to board members directly, that is disturbing information, and somehow they're not feeling comfortable going through the grievance process. And like I said, I've been approached with some very disturbing information, and it's not just that one piece of information. There's a lot of things over the years that teachers have, and not just teachers, have come forward to me. And again, it's not evaluative of the superintendent. It would be evaluative of some policies or some implementation practices that are going on. And it's not necessarily even just negative. There are things that they think could be done better or differently, even differently, that could benefit our students, you know, in a specifically instructional way. And I guess it doesn't rise to the level of a grievance, and they don't feel comfortable coming forward without some sort of sense of protection from the board to express these views. And I think it just feels to me, and if the rest of the board is not motivated by this, I mean, this is clearly a hot potato. But I personally feel strongly that this Common Core, and again, it's because I've done the Bataan March with No Child Left Behind, that I hear all the great intentions, I see all the silver bullets lining up, and I know ultimately where that whole thing led us, okay? And when I see with Common Core, I see an awful lot of good things in writing, I see a lot of good theoretical work being done, but I also see I see a whole litany of ways in which that can go horribly wrong. And I just think for this board and for future boards of education that are sitting in our seats, I would like to see some mechanism whereby staff feel that they can come forward and just discuss maybe better ways of doing things that doesn't become conflicted with the administration or with other people within their departments, perhaps. Does the board feel like this is worth pursuing?
I would say yes.
Yeah.
What we did during like last budget, the music department came forward to us
Yeah.
and came up with a way to make music work within the budget, and help us with the budget. And, that's just one example, but, they contacted us, for Fiona, Ellen, and myself, for the leadership, to sit down with them and discuss, thoughts they had.
Right.
And it was fantastic, and I would welcome anybody, because it worked. They came forward with a system, and Mr. Campolito was actually involved in that conversation. And, it flowed through, and we came up with a way to make everything happen and balance, and it was outstanding. And keep music functional. And, it was a great open dialogue. It really was. And, athletics did the same thing. I mean, ideally, I would think that the school improvement committee is the place for them to come forward to give what would be a school improvement, what we can do to make it better, and grow that thought and bring it up. Because then the school improvement committee would know where to bring that idea. It should go to budget, it should go to policy. We can bring that to the full board. We can.
Yeah, it's one thing to come forward though when you're trying to save money. It's another thing to come forward when you disagree with implementation, for instance, maybe of online learning.
No, I understand, but I mean, there has to be,
So do we need a policy, or do we need some sort of, does the board want to pursue some type of policy that allows, and again, whistleblower specifically deals with crimes, The state mandate, the state law clearly says, if you witness a crime within your workplace, you come forward and you're protected from bringing that evidence forward. It doesn't, it's very vague when it talks about just criticism or suggestions, the suggestion box idea, it's very vague about that.
Are you having the union leaders at your next meeting?
Yeah.
To discuss that?
Yes. So that, and then, I don't know, as far as another agenda, quite frankly, I was gonna pursue this student handbook idea, but now it's already moved over to policy where it naturally lives anyway, which is good. So, if you want the board to take, the school improvement to take a first stab at goals, the goals have gotta be tied, that was a suggestion to the administration in the last meeting.
Yeah.
All right.
Take a stab at it.
So if anybody has idea for goals, come to next Wednesday's meeting.
Okay, budget.
Covered it all here, and as Danielle alluded to, we're ramping up.
Next month we start.
Ed Connection.
Everything is normal and quiet over there. We had our meeting on the first Thursday of October, and normal business. Next meeting will be in Danbury on the first Thursday of November. Nothing exciting going on. Where there is something going on is the Head Start, Early Head Start program at Forest Court. The federal inspectors are coming in on the 17th, which is the Sunday, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there will be a site visit and evaluation. And Ed Connection and the program are looking forward to what I think will be a 5-year certification, which is the longest you can get without having to worry about constant surveillance of the kind that the shorter term would have. So, and I will be on the group that meets with the investigators and tours and so on. That's what's going on.
THS oversight panel.
Moving target, watching and listening, but nothing particular to report.
Okay. The wellness project is,
Yeah, we've been assisting for months, so no,
it's
Well-
no dizzy oration
Okay.
from me.
juvenile court update.
I'm getting some new thoughts that I would like to talk to the superintendent about, and see if that becomes productive.
Okay, is Dave here?
Yes.
Mr. Bissetta? Turf Field Committee update?
Committee update, they've had a couple of meetings. They've elected officers on that committee. Ed Aram as chairman, Mario Longabuco as vice chairman, and Tim Waldron as the secretary. Presently, they have put together an RFP for a land survey, which has gone out. They're expecting the results back for that on November 6th. They're in the process, or we are in the process of doing an RFQ for architects, which will follow the land survey very quickly. They're also looking at some scheduling to a point where they're hoping, they're going backwards to the front, the end date being August of 2014, August 15th. That is the date that they're hoping to complete the project. And they're working with athletics now to reschedule and revamp all spring projects of athletic events so that they're not interfering with any of the project.
How many meetings have you had?
2.
Okay, there's supposed to be a Board of Ed member on that?
I believe they're waiting on,
We didn't even know they were meeting, so we have to appoint somebody to be on it, but nobody communicated with me, or as far as I know, anybody else on the board when the meeting schedule was and who we should have there.
it was brought up at the meeting. I had heard at the meeting that it was brought up that they were waiting on the election of the
They're
new.
gonna make all the decisions before they let the board have someone on the panel.
That's not my call, and not my weakness.
You, okay.
But that was.
Can we
that
get a
was
meeting
brought up.
schedule so we can pick a board member to be on the?
Next meeting is October 30th.
Okay.
There is no set schedule as of yet. The meetings have been basically all over the place because of scheduling conflicts and how fast they wanted to get that land survey deal out there.
Well, you can keep us apprised of it as the
Yep.
only person that has a contact in there that would.
Okay,
be
next
helpful.
meeting is October 30th. It's at the City Hall.
Okay.
And I believe the city council had waited for election, are waiting for election also before they appoint someone to the committee. As of yet, they have no representation.
Who did you say chaired that committee?
Ed Aram.
No, the city basically has no representation because we're gonna wait a month. All right. Thank you, sir.
No problem.
Do we know who from the board is interested in being on that?
Well, that was gonna be the next question. Does anyone have an interest to be on that committee? Nobody?
I'm waiting for the election.
For another 2.5 years.
Okay.
We're going to appoint a new guy, for sure we'll have one.
Okay, items for the upcoming agenda, we have financial statement, committee reports, lawsuit updates. We hope to do something on the Connecticut State Statute 10-151. Any other suggestions?
I would like the full board to look at the insurance information that was brought to budget last month. I think it was very eye-opening and something the board should pursue. I know Andrew has talked about it in the past. But the report that we got was,
We met at the budget committee, and it was gonna be brought back to the budget next month because the comptroller is gonna come to our budget committee meeting. And I was gonna call you and tell you.
so that maybe we can get.
So we'll move that, hopefully it'll move out of your committee to us next month.
Yeah, it's more
As long
just
as,
information.
as long as she can,
Yes.
Yes, she says she could.
okay.
Yep.
Excellent. Anything else? That'll be a quick meeting.
Yeah.
All right. Future meetings. Before we list them, I don't want to keep you too long, but we're having a discussion with City Hall. City Hall is closed on Fridays. They want to have our agendas for all of our meetings, they close at noon. They want to have the agendas for all of our meetings posted by Thursday the week before because they're far too busy on Monday, Tuesday to get them posted. And it causes a problem with their schedule. So they have insisted every week I get an email forwarded me from Deb because City Hall's clerk's department is unhappy. So for the meetings we have coming up, which would be your meeting for the 30th, if we can try to get something tomorrow, a brief agenda that we can get posted. You know, policy being the 6th, if you could get it to us by the 1st, so that we can try to make City Hall happier with us. And then we have personnel on the 6th. Yeah, budget on the 13th, regular board meeting on the 20th. Motion to Daniel, second Fiona, favored, opposed, abstained. Everybody wants to go. Well, they were gonna abstain. All right, everybody wants to go home.